And if you want to just speak, just say through the chair.
Good evening, folks. I want to welcome you to the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office of Emergency Services meeting. I'm going to ask Mayor Medina to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance with Annika.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, can I have a roll call, please?
Atherton. Belmont. Brisbane. Burlingame.
Present.
Colma. Daly City.
Present.
East Palo Alto. Foster City. Half Moon Bay. Hillsborough.
Present.
Menlo Park.
Present.
Millbrae.
Present.
Pacifica. Portola Valley.
Here.
Redwood City.
Present.
San Bruno.
Present.
San Carlos. San Mateo. South San Francisco. Woodside. County of San Mateo.
Here. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. That brings us to item 2. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from June 21st, 2018?
Motion approved.
Okay, motion by Colvin, seconded by Snyder. All those in favor?
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
If
yes,
I
sir.
can request a correction to the minutes, if
yes,
they
sir.
can spell my name correctly on the future meetings to come.
Okay, that's a really good point. Can staff make sure that they correct Mr. Sylvester's name? Okay. Thank you very much. I would appreciate that.
Thank you.
So can I get all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. That brings us to the operational area report. Captain Craig Denton. Captain Denton.
Good evening, everyone. It's great to see everyone again. It's been a little bit. Last week, I was fortunate enough to be promoted to captain with the Sheriff's Office, so thank you. And the Sheriff assigned me to the Office of Emergency Services and Department of Homeland Security, here division here within the Sheriff's Office. So I will be staying with you. And with that being said, I'd like to thank Alma Zamora for 4 years of service within the Office of Emergency Services. She can't be here tonight. She just graduated from the FBI Academy, so congratulations to her. So with that being said, I also have another announcement, if I could, please. I would like to introduce Nolene Powers. Nolene Powers is our part-time Office of Emergency Services District Coordinator for the City of San Carlos. Briefly about Nolene. Nolene is a Half Moon Bay native who began working for the San Mateo County Parks Department in 2008 while attending school. In 2014, Nolene received a Bachelor's of Engineering degree from Oklahoma State University in Fire Protection Systems and Emergency Management. Nolene became the Director of Emergency Management for Noble County, Oklahoma in 2015 before relocating back to California in 2017 to further pursue her career in emergency management. So, Nolene Powers. Okay, all of you have the attachment A in front of you. There have been no significant movement or changes within the numbers. Does anyone have any questions regarding anything on attachment A before we move on to the next item?
Are there any questions? Seeing none.
Okay, all right.
Great. That brings us up to old business SMC alert. Jeff Norris. Mr. Norris.
Good evening, members of the council. Jeff Norris with the Office of Emergency Services. The SMC alert continues to be the primary alert and warning system that's used by San Mateo County. We have the statistics for since our last meeting, and we have had 83 notifications sent through the system during that time period. That is slightly up from our previous quarter, but not significantly. It basically follows the trend of weather, automobile accidents during the summer and such. So there's nothing really extraordinary in the numbers there. What is extraordinary is every city in this county has experienced a notable increase in participation. We have had more subscribers, every city, more subscribers. And we are now above 12%, which beats the national average for opt-in systems, which is 6 to 7%. So we are now really in the lead in the ability to notify our community. And we are doing several measures along the way to improve the performance of the system. We're also reaching out. We've done a number of public presentations. We're trying to be more forward, address more individuals. We've done a lot of public outreach. We've modernized our brochure. We're in the process of modernizing some of the elements on the web page. We've gone to making it easier to use, easier to sign up, and we've taken advantage of some of the newer elements like the QR code that we're using, where a person doesn't even need to take a flyer from us. If they want to conserve the paper, they can just snap a picture of the QR code and it'll take them directly to the website. And so if there are any other questions about the SMC alert, I'd be more than happy to address them.
Can we get that report emailed to us? Because
Yes, we
I like
can.
to follow the percentages.
Oh, yes, we absolutely can.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I
I'll
have
get
one.
that out.
Great. So can you mail that out to all the members or email that?
Yes, we can. What we can do is we can use use our distribution list that sends to everyone in this, everyone on the council, and we'll package that up and get that out promptly.
Great. It sounds like a good idea. Davina?
Yeah, just real quick, is there a fast and handy website link that you could tell us?
smcalert.info.
Thank you.
And that always works. And for individuals who may not want to give a lot of information, or who may be not very comfortable using a computer to try to enter their information, they can always text their 5-digit zip code to 888-777. They won't get quite as many messages or as detailed messages, but that phone will automatically be subscribed to receive notifications based on zip code. Great. No other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That brings us to new business, Yellow Command debrief report. Kevin Rose, Mr. Rose.
Hi, good evening, Supervisor, honorable members. Supervisor, looks like you got some sun today.
Yeah.
American Heart Walk, yes. And September is National Disaster Preparedness Month. Happy National Disaster Preparedness Month. Yellow Command exercise, just a recap in essence of what occurred September 6, 2018. This is all of the 12 Bay Area counties Operational Area Emergency Operations Center exercise. It's attached to the 2-day Urban Shield exercise with regards to funding, but it is a standalone that enables us, as well as all the cities incorporated within the county, basically, to exercise whatever the objectives or scenarios are. This was the second of 2 years with regards to mass care and shelter, and so essentially what we'll do is show the objectives themselves for what this exercise was going to accomplish. The 4 bullets, basically, and there's going to be a lot of information in this, more so to share with you after the fact as I kind of do a rapid recall going through this. But basically, situational awareness, shelters, our emergency operations centers, and also our public information officers. Those were the objectives down and dirty. So overall, there were 12 counties. What we did have was the Regional Joint Information System, or JIS, and essentially that is the all-encompassing system that all of the operational area joint information centers link into. So our Joint Information Center is geographically based. San Mateo County, all the cities reporting up. This is that same messaging, getting it out to the community, one message, one community, united. San Mateo County, we had 15 of the 20 cities participating. We had 400 participants in this exercise, all inclusive. Within the Emergency Operations Center, 13 of the cities participated. Full EOC activation listed there, Atherton. Belmont, Foster City, and San Mateo combined. Twofold. One, in an emergency operations center where all 3 city staff were located at the Belmont. 2, the Foster City shelter, again, all 3 city staff located there as well. Menlo Park, Millbrae, and South City. And then what we had was simulated emergency operations cities, centers for some of the cities. Daly City, East Palo Alto, Pacifica, San Bruno. And then the other two, we had EOC training, and this is basically the county sheriff services bureaus at Half Moon Bay and San Carlos to bring their staff more up to speed. And then the others were Brisbane participated with their public information officer that went to the Foster City shelter. And then we had Redwood City staff actually come to the County Emergency Operations Center to help us out in our endeavor and operations. So WebEOC was one of the other functions that we really wanted to test with regards to information sharing. That's the web-based system that basically enables the city and the county to communicate with one another, and even within our emergency operations centers for the cities and also for the county, for all of our sections to communicate with one another, logistics, operations, planning, finance, even with the management folks, in essence of letting them know of major events that are happening. For this exercise, we called them injects, basically surprises we threw at the players to make sure that they were capturing the event. And 10 cities were able to participate as listed there, along with the county in real time as we had this going. So what WebEOC does and what it provides is it breaks down for all the sections basically to do their work and share with one another. And then also there are what are called boards, and they're more focused on particular items per se. So the first one you see there in the black, those are critical events. That's almost like a running list of everything that's going on. So for here, example, the first one is a building collapse that happened at Spruce Elementary. And then the second one is towards the end of operations, which is always important for Belmont, letting us know their EOC had concluded for the day. So that's continuously occurring where the county can switch it to see just what we're doing, switch it so just our section can see what we're doing, or open it up broadly to see what all the cities in the county have going on. We also have a shelter board, which allows all the 20 cities basically to provide their shelter activity. And essentially with the work of Red Cross and Human Services Agency, what your cities have done is created, for the most part, a primary shelter, which is city-owned, that they can activate, and then secondary, tertiary, et cetera. And that there's a second primary that Red Cross has identified with HSA for your city that's like a non-city-owned. So the first one, think recreation center. Second one, think perhaps like private school with their gymnasium or something along those lines. So we practiced with the cities basically of shelters' activation and how they were doing. All of this is preloaded information, and this is something that we'll continue to work and build upon. The next one is, this is a sample, the top one is a fusion board. And this is medical health, emergency support function 8. And those are counties listed, basically their kind of status, quick flash report of what's going on there. Fusion boards sync up all of the counties to the state, to California Office of Emergency Services, where they have what's called Cal EOC. So this is the way for the State Operations Center for the counties, some who have regional capacity to communicate, but go all the way up to the state so they can see what's going on within our areas. And that really helps them with identifying critical resources if there's a limitation of what operational areas or counties it needs to go to, and vice versa with regards to us, how we get it down to the cities as well. The second part is the Med Health Situation Report, and that's basically what is that medical health picture just in our county. So what's going on with the hospitals, the 911 EMS system? Is it overwhelmed? Even nowadays, boiling down into our skilled nursing facilities and the 17 other provider types under the CMS rule that have to have a disaster plan in place. Surgery centers, clinics, dialysis. These are all encompassing and critical towards the public health structure, and they are the way that we know how to communicate up and down the chain of the level of care and acuity to make sure that the system's intact, or where we have the link or the damage in. The next one is the municipality board. These are the cities, just as it describes your municipality, straight across the board: law, fire, roads, water, communications, utility, fuel. What's going on in your city? What is the impact? Again, very color oriented and really enables you to see what cities are suffering that need that help and attention. These are boards that can be activated if there's just one occurrence, for example, of a flood in your city, or that catastrophic event. And again, the resource, the information to help us to make better information about how we share with all of you. The bottom one is the road closures, and that is not only for your cities, but in incorporated areas, and then, of course, large intersections. So for this exercise, we decided to take down 280 at 92, which during a normal commute, you wouldn't notice a difference, but for this one, essentially, we had to find ingress and egress to get to get resources around to folks, all simulated, of course. Shelters, that was the other function that we had here. Now, we were very fortunate. City of Foster City, along with the help of Belmont and San Mateo, activated their Foster City Recreation Center, which is a designated shelter for Foster City. And so they had staff essentially, one of the important things, upper right picture, always a briefing. There's always a briefing if you're in an op center, if you're at the command post, if you're at a shelter, if you're at a volunteer center. It's that information piece that we're testing. Again, emphasis on WebEOC about the situational sharing of information. This is down to, as you would call, the field. This is basically the grounds, the people there that are interacting with the volunteers, the residents that you're trying to help. We were lucky enough to have the Peninsula Humane Society sync up with Foster City to show a pet shelter for their response team. I'll have a different slide on that. Millbrae simulated a shelter at Station 37. Simulation meant that that wasn't an actual shelter site, but what they did is have staff there for intake, volunteer services, feeding, kind of establish how they were going to carry out a shelter as is. South City, what they did is something that, from the October fires, is Sonoma County had 43 shelters at one point, government sponsored and then unaffiliated, churches helping out with their communities, community centers helping out with their neighborhoods, etc. All of that has to be compressed at one component or another, basically for support. County government, your government cannot support 42 shelters. City cannot support 7 shelters. So South City tested their folks basically to see, in essence, of how they would be able to prioritize which shelter should be the place to go to. And something to think as elected officials is that in catastrophic events, as much as you want to help your cities out, you come to that realization, do we go to that, quote, much larger mega shelter, the community colleges, have to close one of our own. It may show our residents that we don't have something within our city, but for the greater good, in essence, of the community colleges, that more resources, more help, more people, do we send staff? So that was something these cities were focusing on. And then our Human Services Agency, the poor Human Services Agency, they activated the Department Operations Center. We basically made them the worst shelters ever. We threw as many problems at them through these injects, running out of fuel, running out of med health needs, prescription eyeglasses, everything. And they really put their staff to the task, in essence, of trying to do that resource prioritization and getting those requests up to the county, where they had staff in our operations branch, care and shelter, basically trying to capture that and help them out as much as possible. Also working with Red Cross, also simulating working with the Salvation Army with the mass feeding piece. The other is the Peninsula Humane Society. So they have what's called a disaster response team. They have trailers where they go out with staff, the simulated pets there, have volunteers, and basically what they do, and again, something important to stress, not only within the emergency operations centers, those briefings, but the stressing of incident command system. If the staff always ask you, why are we taking ICS 100 or 700? Incident command system is the way that we operate. It's that standard operating guideline and procedure, in essence, of how we communicate and how we get tasks done. So even in the field with the pets, they're utilizing an incident command system to tackle intake, lost and found, animals that are brought there, veterinary medicine to assist them, to have vets come to help them out, volunteers, donations. Pets get more attention than people do when it comes to disasters, unfortunately. And they are the ones that basically are the front lines to help us, in essence, of what should be donated, what really should just be thrown away. And then communications. Basically, they have their own operations center back at Peninsula Humane Society, their ops center. So all of these operations centers, that's one of the things we're really testing and trying to focus on as well. The Emergency Operations Center is starting to focus on some of the cities. So again, ICS is the standard, the general and command staff. You've got the management, you've got the operations, planning, logistics, and finance. And basically, how do your cities utilize the space that they have in order to have the operations center going? Here in Millbrae, it looked like everyone was able to grab their corner. And some of the things to share from the pictures that we're capturing is, again, that information sharing, the real time on the wall, letting everyone know what's going on with their city. So they're not only capturing what disasters or injects are being thrown their way with the city, but also what the county is sharing with them. Did that information make it to them about 280 and 92 being closed? Belmont, as we have here, again, this is Belmont, San Mateo, and Foster City. They're all located within the same room, and essentially the sections are broken down into their quadrants for the most part. Again, far left, the briefing, basically to provide them with all of the information. And the screen there is actually Web EOC running real time. Again, that visualization is you go back to your cities with your EOCs to make sure that that's there for capturing of information. Easels, pen and paper, make sure you have that as well. Whiteboards, low tech is the best tech, truthfully. South San Francisco, what we have here is their Emergency Operations Center. They're very fortunate to have a very good Emergency Operations Center located within their main fire station as a separate building. And one of the things I wanted to point out here for information sharing is they were able to utilize something that's called Dashboard by Esri. And what that does is for this exercise, they were practicing real-time information of incidents and shelters. Remember those 7 shelters that were thrown their way to basically figure out how they were going to, who they were going to decide to support? Did they have enough staff for all 7, or which ones were they thinking about closing down? So again, that visualization, and we call it the fruit salad. You always want all of those different sections wearing the different colored vests interacting with one another. That means that information's being shared back and forth. The EOC for the county, which only gets better next year. So essentially what our Emergency Operations Center is for here and for the exercise was our OES offices and then also the adjoining computer classroom. So ours is a little more disjointed. Again, upper right, we start with the briefing with everyone in the same room, and then basically everyone breaks out to their own areas. One conference room designated for our planning section, one cube farm designated for our finance section, logistics and operations, sharing one main room, and then also some splinters basically for phone communication with what they needed to do. And management, the EOC director, essentially holding those briefings to make sure that all the sections are communicating with one another and bringing the information up. We were fortunate that day to have the National Weather Service, a meteorologist, come up, and then 2 others who heard about our exercise from another county that wasn't doing so well that decided to join their partner. Bragging rights. Samtrans, who joined us as well, again, road closures. What would they do in essence of 5 days into an earthquake, which is what the scenario of trying to get their transportation status up and running again. Red Cross was everywhere, truth be told. They were embedded within your city emergency operations center. They had their own operations center. They were at the Foster City shelter. They were at our emergency operations center. They really put a lot of effort and folks into this, and we were greatly appreciative of it. And the last one was we had a representative from the California Office of Emergency Services. We actually fought for this person because of the 12 counties. Speaking about resource requests, there were only 7 emergency services coordinators available. And so San Mateo County demonstrated the need and was able to get someone there, which helped us out because we had direct link to the State Operations Center. Something for a true event like the October fires for Sonoma and Napa would happen. Cal OES does come to the scene. They call it GeoOps, basically, so that they're right there getting the information real time, helping the locals out. The other piece that we had was the Joint Information Center, as if we didn't have enough to throw it our way. This was a very big undertaking for the entire region, all 12 counties for the Joint Information System. Essentially what they did is they utilized a program called Simulation Deck. And what that was sort of a video game of sorts for public information officers, where it challenged them with social media, with news agency like newspaper information coming their way, and then their own agency output of what they would share with the residents. So we had representatives, our CMO's communications officer, our county manager's office, who ran this whole thing ahead of the Joint Information Center. She brought our social media representative with her, and then we had department PIOs from Human Services Agency, probation, and of course our sheriff's office. City of San Mateo, Burlingame, Brisbane, and Red Cross PIOs were there as well. And again, information sharing, what's kind of difficult to read in that board, what we know, rumors, and questions. They were building a unified message for the county and all of the cities that would be posted out to the communities. And what I mean by that is the Joint Information Center gathers the information, decides on what that external communication would be with the community, internal communication with employees that might have a little more information, and then basically spread it out so that your cities can share the same message through your mechanisms that you already have in place. If you go to the next page, so the top is what they call bleeder. that was in bleats, like Twitter and tweets. So essentially, these were pre-scripted information that we had a simulation cell at the region that was throwing things their way. So in the middle category is basically members of the community. And the first one is basically a guy saying, that's it, I've had it, the county sucks, they're not giving us great information about shelters where I can bring my pet. And so essentially for the Joint Information Center, the social media rep had to decide, do they chase that one individual, or do they start noticing a trend that, you know, this person's just a troll-like and maybe we don't pay attention to them, or a lot of people are saying they're not getting what they need, so we need to push that message where they know to take their pets for the shelters, etc. Bottom left is a simulation of the real-time news agencies. So during this exercise, new things would pop up, basically showing what was happening throughout the region during this exercise. And the far right was basically what that Joint Information Center decided on that final message that they were going to relay to the community. So the county and cities of San Mateo, they declared that local state of emergency, which activates a lot of resources for us. And basically lets the community know the cavalry is coming. Helps you to put the community at ease, in essence, that there is more help on the way in addition to what services we are providing. And the other one was the press release that they worked on, basically with regards to a boil water order. And truth be told, it's really important that there's agreement on how to boil water. This was probably about 10 years ago where the Bay Area had a scare that there was a boil water order for a short period of time, and health officers that are basically the doctor for the county had differing opinions on how much to boil the water for, basically to purify it. Some were saying 5, some were saying 10. One had said 15. I guess you drink the water vapor. So that's one of the things we want to make sure, especially since the health department, we're the overall encompassing seer for public health with the community, that we make sure that message in the joint information is shared with your public information officers as well. So overall, this was just a couple weeks ago. We are working on the after action report, and we'll probably have more to share in the future. But this is what we were able to capture from your city's input, from the agencies, from everyone else. Information sharing, situation reports, they're coming from all over. And basically how to capture that information. We're really trying to make sure that WebEOC is that method and mode that we can really utilize to help us all out. WebEOC, one of the things that was difficult is, as we typically do, while there is a prioritization of how you're supposed to communicate with one another, phone primary, radio somewhat as backup, same thing with situation reporting. We let them use any way to communicate with us. Ham radio, phone, text, email, WebEOC. So that did create some confusion during the exercise of making sure all the information was being gathered and collected. But for an exercise, you just want to basically test and make sure everything's working. Communications, we also had our Sheriff's Communications Unit through ham radio, countywide, trying to make sure everyone from the South Coast to the North Coast, Bayside, Coastside was able to sync and link up with us, which they were. And to the coast, extra props, they basically were trying to sync up to themselves and create, I'm not a techie person, but bouncing from repeater to repeater to repeater to, you know, Joe Schmo up on the hills can make their way all the way to County Center in Redwood City. And then Joint Information Center, the PIOs. This is probably one of the first times we've had a Joint Information Center exercise with your PIOs participating to this level, truth be told, which is fantastic. Resource requesting is something we need to work on. There is a standard of basically a section chief that approves, has logistics look at it, has finance pay for it. Truth be told, for the county, is we'll sort of share. Our finance section chief only really received one of probably a dozen resource requests that was true to form. Again, use as much as you can to try to get it our way, but something that we realize that we really need to train, and we're very fortunate with our controller's office that is all in to help us out in this endeavor moving forward for 2019. And then future training and exercises, EOC, again, credit to all of your emergency managers and to your staff for the pre-exercise training that went into hours of training, EOC training, WebEOC training. Some cities, even like Millbrae, broke it out into individual sections in training their folks as well. And this is to you as dedication of allowing them to have the time to participate in this. And then, of course, shelters. We really didn't tackle that shelter aspect, as I mentioned. As you an elected official, would you close that shelter for the greater good of the community college? If so, how would you guarantee your residents would get the help that they need and that your staff could provide the services that they could do so? So pretty much in a nutshell, a very, very large nutshell, that is essentially the exercise as a whole of how it went, and it went very well with a lot of problems as well that we'll be working on.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rose. Ms. Schneider.
I'm curious, is it a county plan that if we had a real disaster, the community colleges become the mega shelters, assuming they're not damaged?
We've worked on that and discussed that with the community college district because they are much larger, they have more amenities. Of course, if you were to think of this now, Redwood City, I think Kenyatta is under construction, so that's something you always have to think of for real time. But that is something we do want to work on. The Emergency Managers Association has a mass care and shelter committee that tackles these types of issues.
My only concern would be all three of them are way up on hills and pretty far away from everything else. So logistically, and having worked in shelters, and working on shutting down one of the San Bruno shelters during the gas explosion, you get a lot of people coming to where a shelter used to be, and then you've got to direct them elsewhere, and you're trying to connect them with the sheriff's department because they're trying to find loved ones. That would be my only problem. They're way up there and hard to get to. So we'd have to have a transportation component, like a shuttle system or something to add
Agreed,
into.
and actually, next year for Yellow Command, transportation is the theme and scenario. But you're absolutely right, the logistics to go into this to make sure that the move happens when everything is in plan and place. Again, that your residents are taken care of and know where to go.
Okay, great.
Can get
I
there.
heard from our folks, and they really enjoyed the exercise. As an old Red Cross person, sometimes there weren't injects for everybody, but I heard this time everybody pretty much had a role to play, and that was good. That's something to keep aiming for.
Great. Ms. Chuang.
Thank you so much for your It's on. Thank you so much for your report. I just have a question. As you go through the process, do you collect information to be able to provide to the public? And I say that because usually in case of emergency, the residents are interested, what does the city going to do? What is the county going to do? And in this case, we know that from the North Bay fires, also from the flood in North Carolina, a lot of residents decided to stay put because of their pets. And they wait till the last minute to evacuate, which caused a lot. And some by then it's too late to evacuate. So the process of working with the SFP, the animal humane societies, and the fact that the information that you gather, is there something that you then will be able to provide some kind of guideline for the residents so that in case of emergency, the resident knows to anticipate and prepare ahead of time?
Yeah, one of the things that our county manager's office, our communications officer, is examining and sharing with your PIOs is perhaps the city web pages or the county web page, a hidden page that's pre-scripted with messaging in essence of where the shelters are that the pets can go, where are the shelters that the large animals can go, everything that can be shared with the community so that when disaster strikes, that's where they know to go and how to do so. And that's really the onus on us and with you assisting us with regards to SMC Alert of that pushing of the message and where to go to get the information. The North Bay fires, interesting enough, the most informative website was something that an individual on their own had created, a resident had created, and had done such a good job that essentially the county accepted it, made a link to it, and then was able to take it over on their behalf and keep it more updated. And so samples that we can utilize for that communication to the public and which method or media to use to do so is an issue that our communications director is constantly working on with the public information officers joined with the emergency managers. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hurt?
Two quick questions. The first one, do you have like a rounded number of how many participants were a part of this exercise?
All told, roughly 400.
Okay. And then I sit on the board of Samaritan House, and they have emergency shelters. They also have homeless shelters. How are we wrapping them into being a part of the future of taking care of folks in the different areas, in particular San Mateo County?
So the year-round shelter the county has out in South City near the airport, that is something that would be integrated in our within our housing agency, syncing up with our human services agency, our care and shelter branch to make sure that the clients are taken care of. And one of the things actually with shelters is that it really is the homeless population has some kind of really good information network upon themselves that they know to go to the shelters and how to get there. And one of the difficulties that Red Cross could share with you is the point and when to close the shelters. You want to make them comfortable enough and amenable basically to take care of folks. But as you're going a few weeks in, a couple months in, when you make that transition over to try to get back to the regular services, and this is like continuity of operations, of getting business, county business back up and running, services back up and running, try to make sure that transition occurs, and so that you do make sure that the client itself, that if the shelter has to be closed, that they do have those services they can return to, if not alternative services to be provided.
Mr. Sylvester.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sir, I wanted to say this is an outstanding presentation.
Thank you.
I have come from law enforcement, and in looking at some and everything that you've covered in such a brief time, I know you could have spent more time getting into more detail, but what I've gathered, I've come up with the following. Recommendations on your types of committees within the OES. I'm thinking hostage negotiations. You have logistics, operations, and planning. With hostage negotiations, maybe a committee called Intel, where they can disseminate the intel and get it out to the various committees. Maybe one of them already does it already. I also wanted to make mention about the statewide and the medical information that you have access to. Does it work both ways? Can they see what we have here in San Mateo if you were to access that information?
So I am a little over about 4 months into OES. In my 12 years previous was with the EMS agency.
Yes.
So the information I have is 4 months old, but what I can share with you essentially is that the medical health side is really more dialed in than a lot of the other emergency support functions. And the reason being is because the MOOC program that we have, the Medical Health Operational Area Coordinator, that is our EMS administrator, Nancy LaPaula, who soon will be transitioning over to Travis Kuzman, that actually comes to us from Alameda County. And San Mateo County, now this will be next year, but we will be gaining the Regional Disaster Medical Health Coordinator as Travis Kuzman, who's coming over to us. So medical health has operational area that goes to region. There's 6 regions in the state of California. We have 16 counties in Region 2 where we're located, basically down to San Benito, Santa Cruz, Bay Area, and then the coastal communities up to the Oregon border. And with regards to Region 2, our regional disaster medical health specialist is the one that the operational area, whatever is necessary, if they're the one impacted, lets the region know through a flash report that the region then shares with the other 16 counties. We need help, we need this, we need immediate, there's immediate and planned need. And if the region and the counties do not have it, then they tap another region. Region 4 is typically the one that we go to that represents Sacramento and the central counties, basically where all of our first responders live, and also where Sacramento is located. And that's where the EMS Authority and the California Department of Public Health are located, the Medical Health Coordination Center. So we do have a very good capture of our operational area, what resources we have, our warehouses, what we've been able to stock, et cetera. And that's more of the small things like N95s that were utilized during the North Bay fires for residents, surgical masks, et cetera. We have ambulance strike teams. And case in point, we're a few months past the 5-year anniversary of Asiana plane crash, Flight 213. I was the MOOC at the time, and essentially 85% of the resources of ambulances came from AMR through their mutual aid and through the city and county of San Francisco. Because of the region, I had 4 ambulance strike teams from 4 different counties at the ready to come assist us. That's 20 ambulances. And so we are very resource rich, especially the fire side, because of the fact that it has gone more medical, in essence of a paramedic in every rig within this county, is that they are also incorporated. So as far as the big picture, ambulances and ambulance strike teams, I think we've done very well. If we have prepackaged caches, like respiratory caches, we've done fairly well. But that is a continuing endeavor. The region knows what the region has, and the state asks the region. And one of the things I do share is our hospitals actually work on making sure that they have their inventory caches as well. They are required by Joint Commission basically to have 72 hours worth of supply and planning for 96, so to go to that 4 days, because that's about the time the feds are supposed to arrive with their packages. And one of the things that we've done is with the Regional Catastrophic Earthquake Plan is pre-deployment cache of federal assets that basically would come to Travis Air Force Base that we already know what it is it's going to be and what is it's going to be coming to us.
Great. Yes, Mr. Sylvester. Okay, no problem.
Apologies, thank you very much, and thank you very much for an excellent presentation.
No, thank you. Great. Thank you so much, Ms. Carlson.
Through the chair,
Yes.
thank you for your answer to that, which completely segued to what I was about to say. Having all those resources and mutual aid is of top priority because we can't do it all by ourselves. I commend you for ICS 700 because I know that different agencies, like say for instance San Francisco, when I was there, you have different radio codes. How do we communicate with each other? And that's very, very important. And for my colleagues, I'll let you know, if you've ever got into a hazmat suit, you probably won't last no more than 5 minutes because I really appreciate the men and women who don those suits and get into them because it's no easy task. Also, transparency with the media. The media always wants information, and to keep information away from the media is not good. So subsequently, to get that information out, the limited information that they do get, they're happy so that we can all communicate to our constituents and the community. And of course, all the deputies and the officers who are down on the totem pole, they need to get that information as well, because usually they don't hear it, they just take orders. But if they understand, then I think. And lastly, on your ham radio operators, you're right, it's called skipping. The higher you are, the farther out you go, especially if it goes over the water, that signal can bounce and can probably even reach Southern California. So in all, thank you so much. Outstanding. Keep up the great work. It makes me happy to be a part of San Mateo County because everybody plays together in the sandbox, and that's going to make it better for all of us. Thank you so much.
That's 32 years of law enforcement there, isn't there? Ms. Borgens, and then we'll,
Thank you.
Ms. Keegan.
Thank you. Fabulous report. I had just 2 observations, or maybe it's the same. So you said that we are resource rich, but it looks like that one of the statements you made was in Sacramento County, that's where a lot of our emergency personnel live, so we could be personnel challenged. So is there a way, and I don't know, I was thinking about this the other day, of having the ability to bring our gals and guys back here via helicopter, or do we have that discussion going on? Because I know a lot of them do live out of their jurisdiction. So how do we get them back home when there's an emergency? It may not be able to be on the freeway. So have we thought how we can do that?
Yeah, there's, so we have our municipal airports. Now, mind you, FAA during catastrophic disasters takes over. Earthquakes, we're in trouble because basically it's disaster supplies and they have control of what comes in and what have you. But if there were certain isolated incidents, floods, fires that really just impact certain counties, we do have, actually on Half Moon Bay, they've begun this. It's called DART. I forget what the abbreviation is, but it's municipal, think of Dunkirk in the air. So these are essentially individual private citizens that own their airplanes or rent that could do the very thing that you're asking about of bringing things in. The ferry system, they've thought about this in depth. so much so that they used to just be the Water Transportation Authority. They're now called WETA,
WETA.
the Water Emergency Transportation Authority, for that very reason.
Good. And then our hospitals also sometimes have heliports, or, I mean, there's potential to utilize.
True, yeah. Fire can make a landing zone anywhere. And with Peninsula Medical Center, we now have a helipad within San Mateo County.
Good, okay, thank you.
Ms. Keegren?
Just want to commend you on your presentation. If you could send that presentation to all of us, I'd greatly appreciate that. And I think I would make that as a general statement for anything that is presented to us. If there's any possibility of getting it ahead of time, so we can read it and already have questions maybe lined up, that would be appreciative. Thank you.
I'm sure Captain Denon will make sure that that happens, right, Captain Den? Thank you, sir. That brings us to Ms. Degree.
So some of the things though that Janet mentioned was on my mind too was for the coast and Brisbane, those of us that are isolated and our roads, we may not be able to get anybody in or out. So I was thinking about helicopters, ferries, Coast Guard. Do we connect with Coast Guard? Pacifica has a pier. Half Moon Bay has. Is there thinking about those kind of connections as well and landing places?
Dunkirk on water. So I don't know enough about that. But Pillar Point Harbor, a very good access point. Coast Guard, their mission really is more so for the greater good and aspect. So if you are an isolated community that they absolutely need to get to, I don't know well enough. Something we should look into.
Well, I know they practice a lot, but it's most on our coastline and our mountains. But they're dealing with rescue in the beach drownings and things like that. But the coast is kind of isolated, and I would think Brisbane is kind of isolated.
Yeah, mostly by air, and then of course ground transport would be through the trails that we would be able to utilize. South Coast, Skylonda, Pescadero, La Honda area, their CERT teams and their neighborhoods, and even their volunteer fire department, they do exercises where they basically close down the major access roads, and they have to find trails, essentially, the community members, and communicate to one another how far one goes and how they can get to one another. A testament towards Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District and the Peninsula Open Space Trust for our trails and having them in place.
Ms. Gauchier.
Thank you. I was fortunate enough I was in D.C. last week, and the storm, although it passed D.C., I was able to hear a lot of the news. And there was one tragic accident where a tree actually broke and fell into the house and killed the mother and the child. So what are we doing to make people aware of trees and pruning trees, or just being prepared for the next storm that may be coming up? Because that's something that could happen as well.
Yeah, the fire departments themselves and PG&E is doing a very strong push with regards to wildland fire protection, vegetation, fuel protection, essentially trying to help them out of, the bushes right up against the house, really not a good thing nowadays. Trying to make sure to have that perimeter. Always live near a golf course. Apparently they do well as far as border protection and whatnot. But that is something more so on the fire side for suppression, fire prevention, that is part of their campaign that they push out. Yeah.
Great. Are there any additional questions? Great. Thank you so much. That was great, Mr. Rose. That brings us to item 2. This is being put forth by staff, elected official EOC protocol.
Yes, well, also, before I get started, I want to thank all of you for the questions you're asking. I love the questions you're asking. That incident was completely tragic. That's a horrible thing to happen, but, we all want trees in our yards, and you can cut the branches down as much as you want, but if the tree's big enough and it's going to reach your house, it's just a tragedy. But I love your questions over there regarding, on isolated cities and things that we're working on. And individual continuity of operation plans within your own cities, COOP programs, finding out what staff members, what disaster service workers live outside the county. Who's going to have to get back here for that second operational period? Because the first operational period, those people are stuck. And then, and so we have that much time to try to improvise and figure out how we're going to get these people over here based on what's still available to us, whether it's the water or if it's using the DART program or using, the sheriff's air squadron to fly into Livermore and pick me up and bring me back over here or whatever. But those are the types of things that each city needs to be thinking about. So these are great questions. I'm glad to see you're thinking of it. But you have not been forgotten. And what I'm going to talk about now is a protocol it's a guide for emergency operations of elected officials, because you're going to be so vital in what we're going to be doing when the disaster happens. And so what we want to do is make sure that, like everything else that we're doing, as best we can, is standardizing what we're doing and making sure that everybody knows the safest way to go about what they want to do, and yet still do what you're supposed to do, and that is take care of your constituents and make sure that they're receiving the messaging that they're supposed to be receiving. They're receiving the honor of commitment that you're providing to them, to let them know that I'm going to take care of you, we're going to take care of you. So what I've handed out to each one of you is essentially a table of contents of what we're working on. And I'm going to quick overview, fly through this real fast in the interest of time. You have it in front of you. I just want to let you know that this is what we are working on right now. And as we move forward in this process and we come up with more and more things, I will be presenting more and more to you. Hopefully, my goal is by the next time we meet to have something more substantial to give you, maybe even completed. I don't know. But this is something we're really looking forward to, because you will play a vital role. So obviously there will be an overview. We'll go over some risk and threats, response priorities. Obviously protecting life is going to be the highest priority, but what do we need and where do we get it? And what do you have to do in terms of finding that information out? And this goes back, segues to what we were talking about earlier regarding messaging and contacting the EOC and getting that information from one hub area. The phases of the disaster, obviously, it's mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. So all the way through this, you are going to be obviously playing your roles in obviously getting out there and talking to people it's about planning. It's about getting the message out there. If this is what we need you to do now, and getting back to what you were talking about regarding, hey, where are the shelters? Are we shutting down this shelter to go to the larger shelters? And then, of course, recovery and getting, the response, getting back to the response. What we have talked about earlier, how well we play in the sandbox, being resource rich, and the fact, this is all going to come into play, and our emergency responders will go out and do what they do to put out the fires, rescue people, make sure people are being evacuated and being taken to the appropriate places, making sure people know where to go, so that we can, maintain life and be able to keep people going. The SIMS and NEMS, the Standardized Emergency Management System. So there will be some training regarding that. And of course, the National Incident Management System, which is the framework by which we run most all of our emergencies and disasters. Activation and response. Do not self-deploy. Self-deploying is like one of the worst things you can ever do without having any knowledge of what you're getting yourself into. During 9/11, many firefighters died. A lot of law enforcement died in that because they self-deployed. Nobody knew who was there, bad communications. They weren't reporting to command posts. They were just responding to help because that's what we want to do. Everybody just wants to help because our hearts are gigantic. But sometimes, you got to use your head and think about, I got to slow this down, and we got to work together as a team to make sure everybody's safe. Because if you become a victim, it doesn't help anybody out, right? So we need to really think about that. And then the guidelines for responding to a disaster area, we'll outline that. Communications with the EOC, getting back to what we were talking about, using Web EOC, all the different communities and talking to one another. Having all this information flowing into us as the hub, getting back to the intelligence part of what we were talking about. We gather that intel, we disseminate it, we sit down, we plan, our planning people plan, and then we implement it. And at the same time, that information slides down to the public information officers, and we brief you all. We come up with a consistent message, and we push that out based on what the plan was. We push out that message. And a designated liaison for elected officials. I think we all believe that would be something that would be very good, because if at all possible, we'd like to have many of you all in the same location, or at least grouped together so that it'd be easier to get a hold of everybody, because we don't know what the communications will be like at the time. So designated briefing room. And then radio communications. Are you in an area where we have good comms with you from the EOC? Possible roles and responsibilities. You serve as a liaison to state and federal government officials that want to come down, and they're going to want to do the same thing that you're doing. They're going to want to inspect and look at things. And these are all the things that we're going to have to coordinate, because as obviously you all want to get out and assess damage and take a look at what's going on in your communities. And now, and as these folks come down from the state, hey, let's all get together and make sure we go out in one group, or we all go up in one plane, or the plane goes up and we have a video link to a location where you can all see the assessment of your damage, so that you don't actually have to go up in the plane, which during a disaster might not be the best place to be. But those are the things we're thinking about. And then, of course, once we have you together, go and ensure a commitment to recovery with your constituents. And then also, we'll do some training and make sure that everybody understands the proclamations, potential litigations that are out there, special legislation, and development of policy. There's always proclamations that need to be done. Whether it's curfews or special laws or implementing new things, regulations, whatever is needed, you have to basically come forward and get those things done, so that it gives certain your emergency workers more freedom to get done what needs to get done. Consider short and long-term recovery recommendations. Again, planning. As soon as this thing starts, as soon as the disaster gets going, your mind should already start thinking about recovery, because the emergency responders are going to go out and do what they do. But when that's done, that's when the rebuilding starts. And to me, that's where communities can really rise above. The cream comes to the top, and how you recover, how you get people back into their homes, how well can we coordinate insurance companies to come in and get all the things that need to get done? That's the type of stuff. That's where communities rise to the top. And again, I personally, I think that San Mateo County will be phenomenal in that, because we work so well together in all the departments and agencies. Media protocols, again, very, very important. This is going to be gigantic, because the messaging, as elected officials, you all know that poor messaging can cause, not only put people's lives in danger, as we learned in some things in the recent past, like the Hawaii thing, but getting that solid messaging out so that people can, where can they get it, how can they get it. We're all on the same message. We don't want somebody sitting there going on social media saying, hey, this is what I just heard, or we don't want to maybe it's not the right time. Because it's all about timing too. We don't just maybe now it's not the time to talk about how many folks are dead, and that type of stuff. But we want to make sure that we have that all together, and that we're putting things out in the right time. The goal is to keep you all so briefed that you know everything that's going on. And then again, all communicating with one another and saying, okay, is everybody ready? All right, the message is going out. Social media, again, everybody, we all know that Twitter can be very dangerous. So we're going to hold that tight, that social media aspect. No matter how much you want to put something out, we're going to want to really rein that in and make sure that we work as a team, because that's what we will be. Once the disaster hits, our borders are disappear. We are a team. We are County of San Mateo. We are a team. The emergency declarations, how and when to issue local emergency proclamations, proclamations of emergency, presidential declarations of emergency. The declarations the proclamations and declarations within the county are precursors so the state can come in and do theirs, which is a precursor to getting the president to come in so that we can get some extra help. Types of federal disaster assistance, individual assistance, public assistance, hazard mitigation assistance. Again, continuity government operations. It's going to be gigantic. We got to keep everything running. We have to, San Mateo County, everything needs to keep running. Services still need to be given no matter what the disaster that's happening. The services got to continue. So we have to all wrap our heads around that too. I mean, as much as we want to, let our hearts think for us and things like that, we got to take a step back. You're going to have to step back as elected officials and leaders and say, it's my obligation to make sure that I keep everything running. And then, of course, finally, training and exercises. When this is finally completed and disseminated, then that's just the start. Now it's time to train. It's time to exercise. It's time for all of you to practice everything that be taught and exercise everything that's going to be inside this. Because, again, you can read it, but if you're not going out there and simulating it and doing exercises, you're not going to, because what is it saying? You never rise to your level of expectations, you fall to your level of training. So it's one of those things we have to do this, and you have to do this because you will be dead center in the middle of this, and you all well know that there will always be Monday morning quarterbacks, and just like in Sonoma, again, not comparing apples and oranges with them or anything, but the criticism will come, the pats on the back will come, and we all just need to make sure that we've done everything we can to make sure to say, look, we did our due diligence, and that's why we're putting this together. So I will have more for you. I will brief you further, and hopefully I will hope to have a finished product for you the next time. And if I get the finished product, I will send it to you immediately so that the next time we meet, I can meet with you anytime. So the next time we come into one of these things, we're kind of dialed in, and we can ask some questions. We can talk about things a little bit more, but certainly offline. We can even get the training started as soon as it's done. So, sir.
Let me do Ms. Borgens, and then I'll do you, Glenn, because she was, yeah.
Thank you. It is so hard not to self-deploy when there's an emergency. So thank you for saying that. I think we need to say that and say it, because I think most people want to get out there and do exactly what you said. Number 14, training and exercise. Please, yeah, let's definitely do that, because otherwise it's very difficult for me to go out there and assess. I want to be out there and helping. Right. So, being in this position where we really need to assess so we know what the needs are so that we can make that happen. What I really liked also is what you put in here about making sure we go out to the various shelters and the various setups to make sure that our constituents know that we care. Mm-hmm. I know for a fact from some of the fires that we've had in Redwood City that was huge. And I wasn't on the council then that we heard, where are they? And they did show up. And that made all the difference in the world, because you may not be able to fix it, but just being there for them, there may be one little thing you can do. And that is huge. So just on this side of the dais, remember that. It's very, very important that they see your face. But yeah, hold me back, because I'm going to want to be out there. Okay.
Mr. Sylvester. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I always believe if you don't ask, you don't get. I'm familiar with AT&T that they provide a special plan for first responders in the event that they do shut down telephone service, that the first responders can still have access to telephone service. Would it be possible if that can be extended to elected officials? Can we check?
I don't know. Let me look into that.
Right, because if you got my phone number and you're trying to call me and you can't get a hold of me because I don't have one of them SIM chips, then, so just a thought. Thank you.
Would be very helpful too.
Ms. Schneider, good job.
I'm trying to figure out how to put this. I know I've brought this up in the past because I work in garbage. Almost every disaster has a different type of garbage and a different way to handle it. And what has happened in disasters from before Katrina and often is cities aren't prepared for cleanup, even when they think they're prepared. And then what happens is fly-by-night businesses set up, usually in environmental justice communities, and they will, even Northridge earthquake, big piles of concrete left, which then become homes for vectors of all kinds, or tires or things like that. So what I would dearly love, I think this is great, I would dearly love a checklist for each of our cities, because I could get, frankly, the bigger cities who have bigger staff usually in this might have contingency plans. So they'll know that if there's a windstorm and trees are blown down, they've got a contingency for wood. If it's an earthquake, you're going to have a contingency for glass and inerts. All of those things. And if my little city hasn't done that, then I'm at a disadvantage to another city that has that in order. And all of that's that preparation work in front. And I can't tell you if we've got that in Millbrae. I can't tell if any of our neighbors have that. But I've worked with other cities from Katrina on in trying to handle the garbage that comes after a flood. You want to clean it up right away. And then suddenly you'll find people who absolutely were not affected trying to jump in on the free 40-yarders that you're placing around a neighborhood. You'll even have a shortage of garbage bins unless all of you have thought about this, as well as whether it's Conservation Corps workers and the people to do that. So that's a big part of getting your city back up on its feet. And they're called contingency plans. I know it's part of the FEMA has that whole FEMA disaster section there. To me, it doesn't quite go far enough. But I look forward to seeing it, and I'm happy to come down and talk about contracts that I think all of us should have in place. It also saves us money because if an earthquake hits us and it hits, say, half our cities and it hits San Francisco may get a rate per ton and we're paying 4 times that rate per ton. So you try to negotiate all of that ahead of time, and you'll have an idea of what your financial hit might be. It's the best you can do. It's never going to be perfect, but it will help you.
Right. Yep.
Great, Mr. Medina.
Are we referencing a county-wide disaster and local? So I'm trying to get a scenario for where you're going with this. Is it look that we have a massive earthquake that affects our county in a broad base, or are you talking about a particular city that may endure something?
Well, everything. It's scalable. The lessons that are going to be learned within this. I mean, it's a guideline, and each it's a guide. It's going to be it's a protocol, and the beautiful thing about a protocol is that you can take it and make it specific for San Bruno. You can make it specific for Millbrae on what you need and what you want to do in terms of how you figure things out with your department heads and things like that. But the lessons that are to be learned in this, a lot of these lessons can be done on any kind of emergency, because what we're going to be training and exercising on can be, the messaging aspect of this whole thing is the same, whether it's a small disaster or a large disaster. You still want to have appropriate messaging going out, and that everybody has the same messaging, because in the city of San Bruno, there's yourself, there's a police chief, there's a fire, there's fire chiefs, there's department heads, and depending on the disaster, you're going to have multiple people in a command post. Well, we don't want leaks. We don't want anything going on social media. We don't want anybody jumping the gun. So right there, in something that's very small, it's the same aspects of a major large disaster within the county.
And the reason I'm going down that path is I think, first of all, there needs to be collaboration with the electeds. You have a particular role, we have a role.
Yep.
In the city of San Bruno, I've experienced as vice mayor of the PG&E explosion and as mayor of the active shooter at U2. So it's very easy to put a guide on paper, and it's another thing to walk it, live it, and be it. So as far as having to be out there, it is. On the active shooter situation that occurred in April, that was an immediate response that had to have immediate action. And in my world, when Channel 2 asked me some couple days later, so what was your role? My role is to support my community as the elected mayor. My role also is to allow the professionals to do their job. It is not to intervene. It is to give support and be there as a conduit. So where I go down this path, and maybe it's because of my personal walking it, seeing it, living it. From when you have outside folks from, I think who was running for lieutenant governor, the senators, all kinds of folks who wanted to come and see the explosion. Even this whole body. I got a phone call saying, Rico, is it okay if they get on a bus and come through? I said, no. It's no disrespect to my colleagues, but this was not the time. So I am going to be one that's going to follow this very closely with probably a lot of scrutiny, because I think that we really need to look deep of what each one of us are elected by our folks, and each of our folks have expectations of its elected. And for my community, it's that the mayor is there. And in this case, he stands there, even if it's during the press briefing. And I don't need to say anything, but I will be there. And so this all needs to be taken in a global perspective that is also individualized to our communities as electeds.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's great. And the fact that you made a command decision during the pipeline explosion, I think that's absolutely appropriate. And I think that, like Chief Barberini giving the way he did his debriefs after the YouTube, I loved his briefings. The transparency behind him right away, getting the word out there, and the messaging. But his messaging was clear, and it was very good. And I think that each one of you we're not trying to take away anybody's individualism by making a guideline. It's simply it's a guideline, and there's training and exercises that can come along with it. But I look forward to your input.
Thank you. I have a question for you, and I think what you touched upon is really important. So, when you put this forth, did you reach out to various elected officials to formulate the plan that you have in place, or I guess is the plan tonight presenting it to us and to receive feedback? And let me tell you why. I think the mayor brings up a real good point, and the point is all our cities I'm not in the city anymore. I thought I was a Daly City Councilor for a minute, Glenn. But, cities or counties, we all face difficult issues, whether it's, a fire in Woodside or Portola Valley, whether it's something that happened. And I think what would really make this document stronger is to really reach out to the people that actually live the experience and have gone through it. And I think that sort of feedback, and I think that's where you're getting tonight, is maybe something you can sort of orchestrate, whether it's through a subcommittee we create now. I don't know if you want to sit on the subcommittee, but I think
Motion.
You making a motion?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. But I really think that in this document, just having those sort of experiences and conversation would really be helpful. So that's sort of an idea and thought. So, are there any more questions? Great.
Not a question, but a comment. I just want to thank you for getting us to think about this and putting it out there, and I look forward to it being revised more and more.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else? All right, we're going to go through the OES calendar pretty quick. Yep.
Yes, sir. And quickly, the resource rich, not to create false hope, the med health access, the roads are open, the people can get there. That's really the emphasis to focus. Don't think that the cavalry's coming, because we know we try to teach the other message. So some of the communities with regards to outreach that we did, this was a unique CERT training, bilingual training, simultaneous training for the North Fair Oaks community that happened. More than 35 individuals that made it through this program. And one of the things to note is for cities that are fortunate to have the programs with the teams that exercise and train and respond, some do not. And so it's more so the individuals who are trained through this program to be able to help their community. And that was the emphasis on this. And with the follow-up on August 11th, something that Supervisor Canepa has created, on April 30th up in the north zone area, north section of the county, was Mini Disaster Preparedness Day. This was the South Zone Mini Disaster Preparedness Day that we had for the North Fair Oaks community, with the Madam Mayor from Hillsborough who came out to support us and see what we were doing, law, fire, OES, sheriffs there. Interaction with the community. We also had a community barbecue with the sheriff's office. That was great. And before the next slide, I was remiss, this Saturday, Disaster Preparedness Day, 10 to 4, San Mateo Event Center. Thank you all. Your cities will be there, vast majority of them with the CERT booths, first responder apparatus. There'll be presentations, there'll be CPR, first aid, stop the bleed. Stanford University is going to be there 10 to 4. Help you. Thank you for pushing the message. Keep pushing it. Next event was this week, the annual SFO full-scale exercise, which San Francisco in of itself is almost the 21st city. It has its own law and fire. However, the EMS component is San Mateo County. Fire is integral. Law is integral. So this scenario was essentially a plane crash in the Bay, and they had a lot going on. The Emergency Operations Center, again, stressing incident command system. The airport has theirs. United Airlines was a designated airline that opened theirs for testing the family reunification. What we have here is the scene for the multi-casualty incident, 3 casualty collection points, San Francisco and San Mateo County working in concert. Oyster Point, South City, so basically San Mateo County owns that operation, and how they integrated with the airport property. City and County of City College of San Francisco was another designated point. The simulation was survivors from the plane crash in the water that were going there. And the next slide, this was fantastic. This was one of those we all came together and it worked very well. San Francisco and San Mateo County, sometimes the sandbox gets a little dirty. But with Maritime, we were very lucky that here we have Coast Guard, we had South San Francisco's Swiftwater Rescue, Redwood City Swiftwater Rescue, the Sheriff's Office, San Francisco Fire, all of them maneuvering and operating in a phenomenal manner basically for this operation. And this was quite an endeavor that we really want to thank SFO to allow the county to participate in, and something that not only showing the 2 different jurisdictions partnering with one another, but law and fire and EMS working in this manner. County, something just what we do is on October 11th, the Disaster Service Worker Day. For the county employees, this is a day where we have information booths for about 3 hours, where it's other county departments, stakeholders, Red Cross, AMR, that's there. Not only tell you about personal preparedness, family preparedness, but don't forget, especially with your employees, that professional preparedness. In essence, that we have, that what the county does is provide disaster service worker bags. stock it with your own supplies because the operational period, if you're here, you may be overnight, you may be sleeping, you need to make sure you've got your contact solution, your food, your eyeglasses, your prescription, etc. And then October 18th is the Great California Shakeout. For the most part, the state of California at 10:18 a.m. Everyone practices that 2-minute drop, cover, hold. For San Mateo County, what we do is at 11 a.m. is all of the counties. What we have are emergency response coordinators from the various departments, building response coordinators with all of our different campus buildings that we have, and then floor wardens that go through training a particular segment of that floor that they practice of being able to evacuate a building for any kind of situation. This is sort of a fire drill. And so not only other employees, but visitors and clients as well, how to get them out of the building in a timely manner and to make sure that they're accountable for. So the first 2 minutes is the drop, cover, hold, and then it's a massive fire evacuation countywide. All the numbers called in to County Center to make sure that all the departments are prepared for everyone.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That brings us to the hazmat update.
I promise not to be as long as everybody else. I got a little PowerPoint envy right now with everybody. So can you just put some fake one up there, Jeff? So it looks like I got some sort of PowerPoint. No? Okay. I could have. So for people who don't know, my name is Jeff Thorne. I'm a battalion chief with the Belmont Fire Department. I'm here tonight because my predecessor, Ken Thrasher, got promoted to deputy fire chief with the San Mateo, Belmont, and Foster City Fire Departments.
Great.
So effective about 7 days ago, I took over as the operations chief for the San Mateo County Hazmat team, overseeing operations and training, while Chief Thrasher and myself will be sharing administrative duties, overseeing the Hazmat team as well. Tonight, you've heard the 3 cities grouped together a lot, right? Yeah, if you guys haven't heard, the 3 fire departments are in the process of consolidating into a new fire agency. Yeah. We've been at this process for probably going on about 7 years now, and we're in the home stretch. We're hoping to commence operations on January 1st of this year, or next year. January 1st this year will be a little late. So hoping to have it in the next 3 months, we'll be commencing operations. We're in the final home stretch, and we're kind of moving forward with that. By having this new agency, it's actually allow us to expand our services as a hazmat team. We'll have a greater pool of personnel, higher trained quality personnel, and give us a better opportunity to respond to a wide variety of incidents, not only in San Mateo County, but statewide as well, too. Because we're starting to learn, just turn on the news, things aren't just local anymore. They're national, federal, and even beyond that. So it gives us more capabilities to expand how our team operates. With that also being said, is our contract for services is expiring next year. And plus, with that contract of services and the generation of the new agency, both Chief Thrasher and myself are looking forward to working with the council and the staff here at OES to developing a new contract so we continue to provide a excellent service to the county. Does anybody have any? See, I'll keep it nice and short. I can keep talking, trust me. If anybody have any questions, I'd be more than glad to turf from the Chief Thrasher.
Mr. Sylvester?
How did you know Supervisor Canepa?
I just had a guess.
New fire agency, is there particular cities or is this going to be countywide?
It's going to be a new agency called San Mateo Consolidated Fire Department. It's going to be the San Mateo, Foster City, and Belmont agencies are pretty much, I don't want to use the word disbanding, but their previous agency is going to be put to the back burner, forming a brand new agency covering all 3 cities. So it won't be one city leading another. We're all going to be one new department starting fresh over again.
Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome.
Any additional questions? Great. Thank you very much. That brings us to Emergency Managers Association update.
Good evening, council members and Supervisor Canepa. Thank you for having me. I'm Ken Anderson, Sr. I'm with the City of South San Francisco Fire Department, and I'm currently the new Emergency Managers Association president. So after 8 years, I'm finally at the podium. And I'm gonna read you 4 brief projects that we just finished and completed. So hopefully at the end you'll have some questions for me. Very excited to tell you about this first project that we just completed. After many months of communicating and coordinating with the many emergency management professionals, the Planning Working Group, which is a committee of Emergency Managers Association members, has completed an update of the Emergency Operations Center position job aids, or what we call checklists for when you're working in the Emergency Operations Center. These were vetted in some training before, Yellow Command, which the county just told you about, and then lucky enough that they were done beforehand, so a lot of cities in our county were able to use those during Yellow Command, and I must say, from our after action meetings, they passed with flying colors. So we're very happy that those are done. And then I'm also bragging to say that this committee put together such a great product that I see other counties and other cities taking these checklists, making them their own, changing the names on them, and putting the work in their EOCs as well. So that's one project that we're happy got done. The next one, the reporting period on October 31st just ended for the local hazard mitigation plans. And that's a maintenance and update. This is to report any action that was taken on projects that are listed in the plan or additions and subtractions that are needed to be made. So that I want to thank you to everybody here. All the cities are finished, and so did some water districts and special districts like school districts and stuff. Got those all completed in time, and that helps us keeps us compliant for our federal grant opportunities. The next one is we have a group called the Public Warning and Working Group, and they're working on a lot of the things that you heard tonight when it comes to public warning, and one of them is SMC Alert. So we're working with Jeff there from our county OES, and we're putting together some procedures. We're building a contact list of who actually has been trained to send out alerts and capturing that list, and then we're also going to use that list to make sure that they continue to get training on how to use SMC Alert when it gets revised and updated with some products that we're building. Also, we're capturing some, we're going to pre-write some plans and messages to go out as well for SMC Alert as well. So a lot happening with some pre-scripted messages with that group as well. Yesterday we finished the San Mateo County Operations Area 2018 Annual Member Agency Preparedness Survey, which consists of 7 different sections. And what this survey will do, it's going to be sent to the city managers, hopefully by the end of November, and we'll get some of this back starting in December and beginning of January. And then we'll be able to find any weaknesses and our strengths that we have through emergency management side of the house, and work with the county OES and the Emergency Managers Association to fill any of those gaps that we find through that survey. And that's all I have for you.
Great. Ms. Schneider.
Last week in the evening news, they showed a test up in Santa Rosa. They did a test of their cell phone coverage, and they had lots of interesting discoveries, like it made it to Japan when it shouldn't have, but it didn't hit some of the hilly areas. Have we ever thought about doing a cell phone test? These, I assume, are for people who are not on their version of Sonoma SMC.
Yeah. The feds were going to do a WIA test nationwide, and that got put back because of the things that were happening in the Carolina coast. So that got moved to October 3rd. So there will be a federal test of the emergency WIA system, which will be happening. I don't know if our county has done any WIA testing lately when it comes to testing that system.
So San Mateo County does have a fully completed agreement with FEMA to use the wireless emergency and the integrated public alert and warning system, which is the opt-out version of notification, in that the system, as it stands right now, can generate prioritized 90-character messages that are based on a cell tower's location. So we capture a tower, and anybody who's under the umbrella of that tower receives the message. The Santa Rosa test was one of the first in the country where they actually used their live codes to reach out to a community as part of a test. Normally that's done using a testing set of codes. We have not done that, but we are partnered with Santa Rosa, and we're helping them research how Sonoma County's messaging went out in anticipation that at some point in time in the not too distant future, we may do the same, or we may wait until the new FEMA regulations come through, which will expand to either 240 or 360 character message capability, and the ability to much more tightly geocode a message. Rather than capturing a whole tower, we may capture just an area within a tower that's impacted. So we are working very closely with our partners to make sure that we gain the best knowledge from the tests they're doing, and we look forward to doing something similar in the future.
Could you possibly give us a report on that? And exactly how do you spell the acronym?
Oh, WEA is just that, Wireless Emergency Alerts, WEA, and Integrated Public Alert and Warning System is IPAWS.
Thank you.
Both of those are covered. There's a very nice website that FEMA has put together that has a lot of the details how both systems work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Are there any additional questions? Thank you very
Thank you.
much. That brings us to American Red Cross update. Do we have a American Red Cross update? Great.
I'm assuming that the Cliff Notes will work best at this time. So, I'm Jim Holly, American Red Cross. I do government relations as well as external relations, and thank you for having us here at all these meetings. First of all, in terms of what we're probably best known for is our response to individual fires in homes and apartment buildings and that sort of thing. And by the way, how we get there, we don't self-deploy ourselves. We're called by the IC, the incident commander of that individual fire. And if it looks like people need housing or people need clothing or their house is red tagged, we come in and help provide those services, assist them with some rent, or not rent necessarily, but some money toward a motel, some additional money for clothing and food and that sort of thing. And then our health service workers might become involved in finding glasses and prescriptions and that sort of thing. But for this fiscal year so far, we've been blessed. We've had just 4 local fires. One in Daly City was quite large. We had some 8 families involved, and we ended up with something like 23 adults and 8 children. Nationally, we currently have 70 volunteers from our region. We have 4 locally that are deployed to those fires. We have 1 in Guam, and we have 1 in Hawaii as well. One program that's we're very excited about and is quite popular with people is our home fire program. And this is where we go out to homes and we install new fire alarms, the 10-year battery fire alarms, for free, and in addition do a little planning in terms of putting a plan together. How do you get out of the house in case of a fire? Talk a little bit about how to prepare yourself to provide food and that sort of thing for at least 3 days. And we do it 2 ways. One is with programs. We'll get together with a CERT organization or a fire organization or a community group. And we've had 2 programs so far. One, a joint program with Menlo Park and EPA and San Carlos. And we put in 187 alarms and made 184 people more safe. And then we also just started to do something called hotshot calls. We receive phone calls from folks, and they'd like to have a fire alarm. So we'll send out a team, and they might go out to do 2, they might go out to do 3. But anyway, we visited 7 cities and put in 57 alarms and made 32 more people safe. Now, we also do attend events, a lot of community events. Cities will call us, fire departments will call us. We did one for the police department. We did 4 events this year, one in Half Moon Bay, one in EPA, one in San Bruno, and one in Hillsborough. And we've got 4 more scheduled for the next 30 days or so. But we're called on to present information on preparing yourself for disaster. And we get to have little mini talks with people, and they're quite effective, and sometimes might see as many as 200 people in a day. We've also been participating in the 2 disaster events that were mentioned. Yellow Command, we had approximately 30 people involved in Yellow Command, and that included lots of our mental health folks, our health services people, our people that work in emergency operations centers. We also did some consulting with individual cities that were setting up their own shelter, and we sent folks out to consult with them in terms of some of the best ways to set up a shelter, just to offer advice generally. And yesterday, we participated in the SFO exercise, and that was working primarily with victims. And so we had several mental health people there, and we had health services folks, and they were supported by government operations people, by logistics, and some other folks. And we had 92 people out there, one of whom was a paid employee, and the rest were volunteers, including myself. I'm a volunteer. And we're continuing our training efforts. We do something called the Shelter Partner Training. We go to cities, that could be a CERT organization as well, and we provide a 4-hour course in how to work in a shelter, how to set a shelter up, not necessarily manage a shelter, but work through most of the functions you find in a shelter. And we've put on 3 of those, and we've got another one scheduled in the next couple of weeks. And we also have put on a psychological first aid. This is a course how to respond to people who have been caught in a fire or a flood or any other disaster, and what we might see from people, how we might respond to people's needs, who we might need to get involved to help those people. And in total, we trained 119 people in the first 4 months of this year, the first 3 months, excuse me. The cliff notes are getting me down here. I should also tell you, one thing I'm very excited about, and I've been waiting for this for a long time, we've got a program now where we're going to train people that go to events, not necessarily at fires and that sort of thing. Paramedics are there for that. But when we go to a city event or a community event, our folks will be able to do hands-on CPR, and that train people in that. Now, it's not a certified course, and there's no 2 breaths, but it is CPR, and it's possibly those folks aren't as skilled as somebody who's gone through a certificated program, but they can sure provide some help waiting for the first responders. So that's the Cliff Notes. Anybody have any questions?
Great. Are there any questions? Ms. Morgans.
Thank you. So if they're going to do that kind of instant CPR, which I understand that, does that also include a simple explanation of the AEDs or the?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
That's only in the certified course.
Yes, Karen. Ms. Cunningham.
It's about the Red Cross Home Fire Program.
Oh, sure. Sure.
Never heard of that before, and I've been a CERT for
Fantastic
many
program.
years. Yeah,
It's
I'd love
fantastic.
more information on that.
And often elected officials come as well, and they help us. The fire departments always come and help us.
Great.
It gives us credibility, and with a city council person there, it would be quite impressive. Anything else?
No, thanks so much for all your work, Jim. I know you have a lot of passion, and sorry we had to put you through the Cliff Notes, but you did a pretty extensive job. But thank you for really coming to the meetings and for American Red Cross for what you do, because when incidents like this happen, sometimes we're prepared, sometimes we're not, but we know that the American Red Cross is always going to have our back. So thank you for your leadership.
Good. Thank you very much for your comments. Thank you all.
You're welcome. Public comments. About 10 speakers? Okay, good. That brings us to announcements. Do we have any announcements? Ms. Schneider.
I guess Captain Zamora is moving on. I just wanted to say thank you because last year we had a very hot Labor Day for our biggest event in Millbrae. This year we were prepared with cooling centers and we didn't need them. So thank you to Bill and to Captain Zamora. She was great. Very much appreciated. That and Millbrae will be having CPR Saturday on February 2nd. This will be our first one, and it's actually a product of one of our school trustees where the firefighters and his daughters who'd had CPR training saved his life. So this is him, again, paying forward. So our first CPR Saturday.
Great. Are there any additional announcements? Seeing none, I do want to tell you that there is an admin committee meeting January 10th, 2019. We'll meet again for the ESC meeting Thursday, January 17th, 2019. Before we adjourn in memory, I want to take a moment of silence for Ann Schneider's father, who passed recently. So if we can just, Mr. Schneider, if we can just take a couple of minutes. With that, can I have a motion to adjourn? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So have you done that San Mateo alert thing? Am I signed up?